Hey, good morning. My name's Rick Jenkins. I'm the Standard Plans Publication Engineer here in the Roadway Design Office in Tallahassee. This time of year, we go over the Standard Plans update for the changes we made to the 2022-2023 Standard Plans. We go through a brief overview of everything we changed. We don't cover every change. We try to cover the changes that we think you guys would be interested in, and they're important changes. So here's an agenda of what we're going to cover today. First, I'm going to go over a few of the website updates. Then we'll get into the actual standard plans updates. I'm going to cover the miscellaneous roadway updates. Durwood Shepherd is going to cover the 102 series, the temporary traffic control updates. And Joshua Turley will cover our structures and bridge related updates. Here's the main page of the standard plans for the road and bridge construction. As always, if you have any questions on the standard plans and you don't know exactly who to contact, you can always contact myself or our state standard plans engineer, Durwood Shepherd. Okay, I forgot to mention at the beginning, I did want to mention if you have any questions that come up, just type them in the chat. After the presentation's over, we're going to put them together in a spreadsheet. We'll develop a response to all of them, and we'll send it out to all the registered users today to make sure that you can see all the answers. We may answer some in the chat, but if not, don't worry, we will get to your questions. Okay, so you can see that our website did change this last year. They updated the color scheme and all, but in addition to the overall look of the website changing this year, we made a number of updates to the standard plans website. We know how important it is for you guys to have that information always available. So we wanted to make a few improvements to make it a little easier. We still have our links to the contact information archived. So here's our contact information, our archived design standards, training, the developmental standard plans, and of course, all of the standard plans. The latest edition of the standard plans is always listed on top. You can also access the implementation bulletin here. Here are the indexes. We have the complete ebook available here. The revision log is always the best place to see a summary of what changed in the indexes on a given cycle. You can see we have the sheet and summary of what changed on each sheet. You can see we had quite a few changes this year, and this is just really a brief summary of what changed on each sheet. You can also find all the past editions of the standard plans here. The review and response section was the biggest change to our website. We still have the origination form and a link to the industry review, just like last year, and the archive is basically the same as last year. But we now have the track the status of revision page that has all the changes that we've made throughout the year to the standard plans for the current cycle. You can see that there's a link to the original package that was sent out for review. I'm gonna select an example here. You can see there's the origination form with the red lines and the draft. We also have the response packages for any indexes we received comments on from our industry review or internal review process. You can see we didn't receive a comment on all of them. Here's an example of what our response package looks like. It's got the comments and the responses. And once FHWA has approved the revisions, we post a draft of the approved package with the origination form and red lines, like shown here. Here's the origination form, and then you'll see that we have the red lines. And this draft should be the same as what we released for implementation. Okay, now that we're done with the overview of the website, let's go over the updates to the 2022-2023 standard plan indexes. We had a lot of revisions this year, but some of them were just administrative changes, so it shouldn't take that long to go through them all. The first revision I want to go over is more of a global change that was requested by our state materials office. Per the request of industry, Class 1 concrete was removed from the specifications and therefore had to be removed from the standard plans. This was done to 18 total indexes. I'm not going to go over each and every location within indexes where Class 1 concrete had to be replaced, but here is a complete list of the affected indexes. Like I mentioned, I'm not going to cover all the locations, but index 370001 was one of the indexes where Class 1 concrete had to be replaced with Class 2. So you can see we just found where the Class 1 was listed and subbed it out for Class 2. This index also had a revision to General Note 1. The existing note provided direction to use 4 expansion joints per index 350001, which provides the required joint dimensions. However, it was not clear what the required spacing of these 4 expansion joints should be. Spacing between these joints with asphalt-based concrete pavement should be 15 feet. General Note 1 was revised to indicate the required spacing of the joints. Here's the updated index with the updated General Note 1 and also the Class 1 concrete reference revised. The next pair of indexes I want to go over are the Superelevation Transition indexes 000510 and 000511. These revisions to the Superelevation Transition indexes were proposed to make the standard plans more consistent with the FDOT Design Manual, FDM, and Table 210.9.3. This is, you're going to hear me say this repeatedly today. I mean, a lot of the changes we made were to make the standard plans, the FDM, the traffic manual consistent, and that's what leads to a lot of our updates. Oh, sorry. Here we added the arrows to section A to be consistent with the arrows included in the standard plans index 000511. We updated the slope ratios table to match the FDM. And we added a 2-lane option to the pavement with median details to be consistent with FDM. Here is the updated sheet 1 with the revisions we made. Okay, here's index 000511, Superelevation Transitions for low speed highways. Similar to 510, these revisions were made to make the standard plans more consistent with the FDM. Here on sheet 1, we updated note 4 to match the values in the FDM. We added a 1-lane option to the facilities to be consistent with the FDM. And here is updated sheet 1. Here on sheet 2, see we updated the slope ratio table. And we changed the ratio call out in the profile views for clarity. And here is the updated sheet 2. The next index I want to cover is index 350001, concrete pavement joints. These changes came from our state pavement engineer, Mary Jane Hayden. We made a few revisions for clarity, including updating note 3 to delete the standard load transfer because the correct tie bars are not used for load transfer. We changed the spacing of number 5 bars from 30 inch to 36 inch. This was done to match the spacing of the slabs, which are typically 15 feet long. We corrected the butt construction joint details to show the joints extending from the top of the slab all the way to the bottom of the slab. But the main update to this page was adding the relation of dowels to tie bars detail. This detail should depict the minimum distance that tie bars should be placed from transverse joints. This was to eliminate the potential of the tie bars overlapping with dowel bars near slab corners. There should be at least 9 inches of clearance between the end of the dowel bars and the tie bars, so place tie bars at least 18 inches from the transverse joints. Here's the updated sheet 1 with all the revisions we just went over. Okay, here's the drainage index, 425061, the closed flume inlet. I've received a number of calls over this over the last couple of years. The flume length must be called in the plans. The call out previously said varies, but didn't give good direction on how this was to be called in the plans. This information has been added to the SPI to make it clear how the designer should specify this in the plans. We added the flume length to the generic varies call out to make it clear what we actually wanted to be specified. Also, the varies callouts were deleted from the section reference and note because the sections as shown are not variable. Here's the updated sheet 2. You can see we updated the callout here. Okay, here's the next drainage index that I want to talk about. We moved the joining mainline pipe to stub pipe details and notes 3 and 4 to the standard plans instructions. And we deleted notes 5 and 7 because they were left over from the old pipe riser detail that was removed. These changes were brought about because the drainage manual requires pipe junctions to have topside access via a structure. Deviation from using a structure to join pipes requires district drainage engineer approval. While there are applications where the stub mainline pipe may be needed, the detail is proposed to be removed from the index to emphasize that it's a non-standard item. Here's the SPI with the information added. You can see that we added the notes and the details. And here's the updated sheet 4 with the detail removed and the notes deleted. Okay, like we've done in the past few years, we did go through and clean up and redevelop a few indexes this cycle. The 3 indexes that I redeveloped were index 520001, curb and gutter, 520005, concrete shoulder gutter spillway, and 520010, the median opening flume. I'm not going to go over each index since it was the same concept with all 3, but I will go over the changes to the 520001 so you can see the concept. We moved all general notes to sheet 1 and created isometric views to stay consistent with the other indexes. And we did this to all 3 indexes. You can see we grabbed the general note and from here and moved it to sheet 1. We also went through the callouts to determine if some were better represented as notes. We did this throughout any index I worked on. We did this to determine if notes should become callouts or callouts should become notes to make things more clear. We added the new sheet 1 with the isometric views of all the pieces. It looks a lot cleaner with the general notes and the table of contents here on sheet 1. sheet 2, formerly sheet 1, with the same information as before, just redrawn and cleaned up. And here's the new sheet 3, formerly sheet 2, pretty much the same information with general notes removed and redrawn and cleaned up. We had several updates to the detectable warnings and sidewalk curb ramps index 522002. There had been some confusion on the minimum curb ramp width and how it should align. So we added a new note 2C to help clarify that the minimum width is just a minimum and that the width should match the adjoining sidewalk or shared use path. So the CR-D curb ramp is essentially half of the CR-C curb ramp. The CR-C curb ramp currently shows the 4-foot minimum dimension at the back of sidewalk to provide a large enough level landing footprint for a wheelchair. The CR-D curb ramp, as it's currently shown in the index, does not provide the best configuration for users of the mobility devices. So we updated the CR-D ramp to have a 4-foot minimum dimension at the back of sidewalk for the level landing at the bottom of the curb ramp. This provides the necessary plan area footprint for level landing to allow for the wheelchair movement and change of direction. Ideally, the resulting curb return would remain parallel to and aligned with the direction of the crossing. So here's the updated sheet 1 with the note added. And here's the updated sheet 2 with the CR-D curb ramp updated. You can see the 4-foot minimum and how it's aligned with the double crosswalk. Okay, here's some changes that come from our traffic engineering office. First, we revised General Note 2 for clarity here on Index 630001. It now reads, when sidewalk is damaged, the conduit installation replace the entire sidewalk slab. And we wanted to make it clear that the slab had to be replaced in whole if damaged. The main update to this index was adding the fiber optic cable route marker label detail. There's a repetition of this detail in each plan set with new fiber installation. A standard index detail may eliminate the inclusion of this detail drawing in each project plan set. So here's the updated index. You can see how we added this detail and updated the notes. So next I want to go over the CCTV pole indexes. First, we will look at the concrete CCTV pole index. The handhold on the pole should be located downstream of the traffic, so all details and notes were updated to show this. These updates were made to both the CCTV pole indexes, both of them, the concrete and steel, 641-020 and 649-020, including adding some new notes on the pole installation. Updating these indexes fixes a couple of issues. First off, the handhold location now matches the APL information we provide. Also, the location of the coupling shown on the CCTV pole assembly on sheets 1 and 2 did not match the location of the couplings shown on the pole elevation and handhold detail on sheets 3 and 4. I'm not going to go over each and every sheet in this index, as all these revisions were related to the handhold locations. But here is the updated sheet 1, and you can see here in the next view, I'll zoom in. You can see that we actually changed the way that the handhold was represented on the detail, and that just clarifies the location. We made a very similar revisions to 649-020, the steel CCTV poles. We updated the locations and added the handhold locations and added the notes to match the notes that are in the concrete CCTV pole index 641020 that we just went over. Once again, I'm not going to go over each sheet, but here's the updated sheet 1 with the new notes and the updated handhold details. So the foundations within Standard Plans Index is 646.001, 654.001, 695.001, and the 700.120 are being updated to be more consistent between the different applications. An analysis was completed by our Structures Design Office to determine if the foundations could be revised to provide a more consistent design between the various applications. The aluminum post or pole references were also updated throughout the indexes. So let's start with index 646.001. We changed note 4 to remove concrete type since it's specified in the specification 646. We added note 5 stating, as an alternative to the direct buried post-mounted pedestrian detector assembly shown below, the post may be installed on a transformer base as a transformer base included on the APL approved, use a transformer base included on the APL approved as an alternative to a post-mounted assembly. I'm going to show you that actual APL item in a second. We updated all the post callouts to be consistent throughout the indexes and the specifications. This was also part of a revision to specification 646. We updated the foundations in the pedestal mounted detail, changed the adjacent to sidewalk detail, the tie bars call out to a number 4 stirrups equally spaced with a 12-inch maximum spacing. And we changed all references to the 4-inch nominal aluminum pipe to nominal 4-inch aluminum pole or post, whichever one's appropriate, Schedule 40. Okay, here's the actual APL listing for the pedestal mounted option that I talked about with the new Note 5. If you want more information on this, you can go check out our APL website and see the actual option. Okay, here's the newly updated index 646.001 with Note 5 and the updated details. Okay, now let's look at 654.001. We made the same type of revisions as 646. We reorganized to show the beacon assembly adjacent to the sidewalk. We deleted detail B and updated note 1 to reference index 700-120 for pull box conduit wiring and grounding installation requirements. We also updated note 7. We updated the pole callouts and updated the way the anchor bolts were shown in the foundations and updated the callouts to point both front view and side view details for clarity. I'll show you what it looks like in a second. So here's the updated sheet 1. You can see how we have the callouts now in between the two, and we did this throughout these indexes to make it clear that it's just a different view you're looking at, the front view and the side view. Sheet 2 is a new sheet showing the beacon assembly in the sidewalk curb. There. This edition of the inside curb option allows the reach range to work like it does on 646.001. We also made similar updates to the foundation details and callouts in index 695.001 traffic monitoring sites. Here's the red lines for the new sheet 8. See, it's very similar red lines and proposed changes. Here's the updated sheet 8 with the foundations and callouts revised. Here's the new sheet 9. We made the same type of foundation updates to make the indexes consistent. We updated the pole callouts. We revised note 2 to reference specification 646, and we did this on all the indexes. Per the request of our structures office, we did make some edits to note 6 regarding the concrete base dimensions. And here's the new updated sheet 9 with the foundation updates, the pole call out updates, and the revised notes. In addition to the foundation updates, our traffic engineering office made some other changes to the index 695. On sheets 1, 2, 3, and 4, we updated the name of the office from Transportation Statistics to Transportation Data and Analytics. I'm not going to show you all of these, but here's sheet 1 showing this update. They added note 6, 12 port patch panel, and managed field Ethernet switch. This was also done to multiple sheets, but I wanted to show you what it looked like here. Also added callouts here to reference the new note 6. Here's the new callouts. And here's the updated sheet 1 with the callouts and then the notes updated. So here on sheet 4, we updated the color scheme to match the color scheme that's used by the vendors. So here's the updated sheet 4 with the color scheme updated. So the interstate traffic monitoring sites are being connected to the FDOT statewide fiber optic network. The weigh-in motion sensors are being installed in 2 different ASTM configurations, Type 1 and Type 3. The weight sensor language was added to specs 695 and 995 according to all volume classification and weigh-in motion traffic monitoring stations. All of these revisions are necessary based on current updates to specification language and industry standards. So here's a new sheet 6 describing the telemeter traffic monitoring sites, TTMS, for Type 1 lane configurations, A and B. They also added a note to contact the Transportation Data and Analytics Office for the correct layout based on vehicle classification unit. And here's the new sheet 7 describing the TTMS for Type 3 lane configuration. Okay, now let's look at 700, 120. We made similar updates to the foundation and pole details and the notes here in 700, 120 as we did in the 646, 654, and 695. We revised the callouts and foundation to make it as consistent between the 4 indexes as possible. We did this throughout the index. Here you can see a quick run through of the red line changes, pretty much the same markups on each sheet on the foundation updates, the added note, and the pole call outs. So I'm just going to quickly run through those. And here's the updated index. You can see the revised call outs on the pole and the foundation. and the note on each sheet is very consistent what the changes were. So I'm just quickly scroll through all of these changes. I did want to point out the new sheet 10. Traditionally, the blink out signs have been installed on traffic signal mast arms. To allow for flexibility in this and in installation, the roadside mounting option is now being proposed. The next index I want to go over is index 700-101, and specifically an update to the single column sign case 8, offset from a median, curb, or island nose. This request actually came from our District 4 office. They had been trying to implement a standardized 6-foot offset in this application as a District 4 practice, so we're adding it to the standard plans index to make it a statewide policy. Here you can see case 8 detail has been updated with a double asterisk and note to require that the offset be 6-foot standard, 2-foot minimum from the median or island nose. Okay, next I'm going to go over some of our updates to the special sign details index 700-102. On sheet 5, we updated the speeding fines doubled sign, FTP 38-06, the font, the dimensions, and the numbering. This update was made, this was updated to follow the current MUTCD standards and correct the FTP graphic. I did want to point out that we do, anytime we make a revision to a sign or we add a new sign, that we have to update the numbers because the last 2 digits are the year that it was released. So you'll see all the updates we made this time. We'll have 22 as the end of the sign numbers. So here is the updated speeding fine sign. And you can see the dimensions updated and including the new number. Okay, here on sheet 10, we added FTP 90-22 and FTP-91-22, the 2 new school bus load or unload signs. We also updated MOT 106, MOT 406, there's 406, MOT 506, MOT 606, MOT 706, MOT 806, and MOT 906, all for font size, dimensions, and numbering. We then had to shift to accommodate the new signs. So MOT 806 and MOT 906 are now on sheet 11. And here's the updated sheet 10 with the updated signs. And you can see the newly added FTP 90-22 and 91-22 for school bus loadings. Okay, here's updated sheet 12. We added 2 new signs, MOT 26A-22 and MOT 26B-22. These were bikes merged signs and an arrow for that. We did delete one index from the standard plans altogether. Index 700-109 is no longer needed since this information was moved to FDM Chapter 230 with the bulletin 21-07 on wrong way driving. Please see the bulletin 21-07 for more information on this. The next index I want to cover is index 706-01. For clarity, we updated index 706-001 in regards to where yellow paint should be used and where to place RPMs. We changed all references to yellow reflective paint to durable paint yellow. We also added 2 new notes. We wanted to make it clear that bituminous is not allowed for the installation of RPMs on concrete. So we added note 3, use epoxy adhesive to install RPMs to concrete median nose curbs. RPMs should not be placed on painted surfaces, so we added note 4, install RPMs on clean, unpainted concrete surface. Do not paint curb surface where RPMs will be placed. Here is updated sheet 3. Sheet 4 previously showed yellow RPMs and yellow paint on the face of the curb, which did not align with MUTCD. So we revised detail G to remove yellow paint from the nose and call for white RPMs to be consistent with MUTCD. Here's updated sheet 4. Okay, next I'm going to cover the 711001, the pavement markings. Here's the first update here on sheet 1. We added in pavement pedestrian warning markings to stay consistent with the traffic manual updates that Javier actually presented on last week as part of our symposium presentations. We also deleted note 1 for pavement messages, changed note 5, new note 4, to all pavement messages must be white except route shields. Oh shoot, sorry, didn't mean to change it. So where are we on note 4 here? Yes, so note 4 now reads, all pavement messages must be white except for route shields and in pavement warning markings, so the new pavement warning markings. A deleted pavement message spacing table. We deleted the general note. These changes were made to make the index consistent with the FDM that already has this information. In addition, we deleted some duplicate information and added some other deleted information into the FDM as well. Here's the updated sheet 1 with the new notes and details. You can see our new detail here. So here on sheet 2, we moved the markings for merge detail from the deleted sheet 9. I'll show you where it was previously located in a second. Here's the updated sheet 2. We deleted the right turn lane drop island details and detail 6 from the index. This information was moved to the FDM and combined with the signing details shown in chapter 230. We deleted the traffic channelization at Gore detail note that was a leftover note from the information shown in the FDM. Here's the updated sheet 8. You can see that we actually added the markings for traffic separation detail from the deleted sheet 9. We'll go over that in just a second. Okay, here's sheet 9. Like I said, it was deleted from the index and all the information was either moved to another sheet or somewhere in the FDM. The schemes for transition details and detail D were deleted from the index and moved to the FDM. They were combined with the signing details shown in Exhibit 230-05. We changed detail E to markings for merge and deleted the note, and then moved it to sheet 2, moved the details to sheet 2 like I showed you earlier. And we moved the markings for traffic separation to sheet 8. Okay, for the turn lane marking sheet, we reverted back to the 2018-2019 index and deleted the redundant information that is already shown in FDM Exhibit 212-1. We also added the sheet title here. We try to do this on every sheet throughout the standard plans to stay consistent. Okay, here is the new sheet 10 that replaces sheet 11 with all the updates. On sheet 12, or the new sheet 11, we deleted note 4 and renumbered the notes. Note 4 calls for the tinting the blue pavement markings to match color 15180 of the Federal Standard 595A. This color information is already covered in the standard specification section 971-1.6, so it doesn't need to be addressed here in the index at all. So we just deleted note 4 and eliminated the incorrect reference. Here's the updated sheet with note 4 deleted and references updated. Okay, so we did make some changes here to the 711-003, the Interchange Markings Index, again this year. A lot of the changes were similar to the ones we made last year as well. We added some new chevrons and updated pavement markings and callouts. Last year, we added the chevrons to all the exit ramps, but this year we're adding the chevrons to the entrance ramps, and now both entrance and exit ramps have chevron markings for consistency. So here you can see where we added the chevrons. So we added and updated the chevrons here on sheet 2 as well, but we also added a lane line extensions to extend to the tapers. So here's the updated sheet 2, and you can see what I was talking about with the lane line extensions extending to the taper. This was done to try to stay in line with the updates that are coming to the MUTCD. So we added the chevrons here on sheet 5 as well. We did delete detail C from the index as it was moved to sheet 3 of index 706-001. Here we moved note 1 to the wrong way arrow call out at the gore to make it clear exactly where the wrong way arrow is supposed to be placed. I mentioned that before when I was talking about cleaning up the indexes. This is the kind of thing that we check to see whether a note better fits as a note or if it better fits as a call out. And here's the updated sheet 5 now with just one note and then the call out and then the chevrons added. Okay, similar to sheet 5, we moved a note to a call out to make it clear where the wrong way arrow is to be placed. Previously a note, now a call out. Here you can see the note and update and call outs updated. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, we did have one new index this year. This new index was developed by Richard Stepp in coordination with the industry fabricators and the Structures Design Office. The purpose of this index was to provide a utility conflict pole option that can avoid overhead utilities and power lines. There's a horizontal length of 16 feet provided. The vertical rise provided is 15 feet. By comparison, the normal poles in the Standard Plans Index 715002 have a vertical rise of only 5 feet. This has been a popular design used in the districts, but now with it being added as a Standard Plans Index, The need for the project-specific pay items, special designs, and central office review and approval is pretty much gone. The index provides a complete design that the users can just reference in their plans. So let's look at sheet 1. The materials, fabrication, and construction requirements are all provided. As a result, the shop drawings are not required. The engineer of record will choose the mounting height and include that in the plans. The mounting heights are available in 5-foot increments while staying in the 35 to 50 feet range. Pole clamp and welding requirements are provided here on sheet 2. Here, the fixture arm length is further detailed. The fixture arm length measures from the center line of the pole, center line of the pole to the approximate center of the luminaire. All of the dimensions can be checked here as well. Sheet 3 shows the foundation and base details, similar to the poles in 715-002, but only with larger foundations and pole thickness. We do have a frangible or breakaway base included as well. Also shown on sheet 3 is the foundation information. The 2.5 foot to 2.5 foot concrete foundation is included. The engineer should select the standard foundation pay item option to use the foundation shown in the index. If a different option is needed, a project-specific design will be required. Okay, effective July 2022, there will be a new basis of estimates pay item structure for the light poles covered in both indexes, 715-002 to standard pole and the 715-003 to utility conflict pole that we just covered. The new pay item structure includes index number, foundation type, either standard or project specific, mounting height, horizontal arm length, and vertical arm rise. All right, and that's pretty much all I have today. Like I said, please submit any questions that you may have on what I've done or what Durwood or Josh are going to cover coming up. If you have any questions, just submit them in the chat, and we're going to put them all together and send them to everyone in a Excel form.
Thanks, Rick. Good morning, everyone. Durwood Shepard, I'm the state standard plans engineer, and I'm going to go through, like I did last year, some of the temporary traffic control 102 series standard plan indexes changes. Don't worry, there are a lot less than they were last year, but yeah, there was a few questions and comments that came up over the last year that we decided to make some additional minor revisions or clarifications, as well as add a couple of new scenarios to the temporary traffic control standard plan. So I'll go through those now. Some general changes. We kind of noticed that there was some nomenclature issues that were generating questions about how duration provisions throughout the standard plans were to be applied. And so we noticed that between particularly index 102-600 and the rest of the series, that there was kind of a mixture of terms between referring to it as the work zone or referring to a work operation. And in general, the vast majority of the duration provisions that are included throughout the standard plans are related to that specific operation. You know, if you're conducting a lane closure, then obviously that 60-minute provision, for example, is for the time limit of that particular operation, not for your entire work zone or construction limits. And so we wanted to make sure that we clarified that and used proper terminology so people weren't confusing your entire construction limit or your work zone with a specific temporary traffic control work operation. So throughout the notes, we revised work zone to work operation. You'll also notice that last year there was some changes made to try to better address some standard plan signing options and information relative to any time that you're affecting a marked bicycle lane or what we refer to as a rideable shoulder. And the rideable shoulder was intended to capture the fact that on the state highway system, outside of limited access facilities, any shoulder 4 feet or wider is considered a bicycle facility. And so, we had this note kind of indicating more so for the EOR that if you have work that's encroaching in these areas, then you need to close that bicycle lane or shoulder to accommodate the cyclist. And the note kind of appeared on a number of different indexes, but we got a lot of questions about the rideable shoulder part of this. So we decided to better define exactly what we meant by marked bicycle lane, and in particular the shoulder part of this. And so we revised the language in the 102 specification and say it one place in the spec instead of having a note that's redundant throughout the standard. So this note was removed off each individual index that had it on there before, and now it's just addressed in one place in specification 102. Another kind of just quick update, general change is, with the revised 102 series last year, we posted a quick reference sheet that had, basically just a quick reference guide to all the tables that at one time were scattered throughout the indexes, the 600 series, and they weren't all necessarily consistent. So last year we went through and created one set of tables that are posted within 102-600, but then we also created this quick reference sheet so that folks could print it out, maybe laminate it, have a reference for them in the field, regardless to what standard they're looking at. And so we did add a second sheet to this reference. So, to actually capture all the tables that are included in 102-600, but then also we wanted to add a 9th table that is only on this quick reference sheet, but it is basically tabulated values of L, which is the taper length, and for common widths and speeds. And then that way you're not out there having to do calculations when determining what the appropriate value is for your taper, regardless to whether it's the full value of L or down to a 1/3 L if it's a shoulder taper. So again, for common widths and speeds, we now have this table to help assist it with those example values. So just going through some specific changes throughout the indexes themselves. Index 102-600 sheet 5, which had the work zone sign information. So, U-channel, sign size type information. We made a revision to table 7, and basically there was some sign size options that were basically a holdover from the project information sign that was removed a couple of years ago. And so we cleaned up the table to remove those sign size options, as well as there was note 9 in last year's version of the general notes that addressed the proper weight of posts to use with certain heights of signs. And we felt that that was more appropriate to consolidate that with the notes for the actual table 7, which also provides different requirements for what size posts to use for different mounting heights and sign sizes. So that's it for sheet 5. On sheet 6, you'll see towards the end of this presentation on the 102 series that we've added a new scenario in the bicycle facility closure index 102.661, and within those there are some additional signs that weren't previously shown either on 102.600 or 700.102, which is the special sign details index. And so on the left here we have some of the MUTCD standard highway signs that weren't shown on 102.600 that we've added. And then on the right, you're seeing the 2 additional bike merge signs that we needed to add specifically because some of these bicycle options that we've added to the standard plans, while have been approved by the MUTCD committee, they're not actually integrated into the standard highway signs yet. And so to make sure that they're available, we've created the Florida specific MOT signs to cover it in the interim. Eventually, we would rather just rely on the standard highway signs manual, and we'll likely get rid of the MOT, FDOT specific signs, but so that probably somewhat temporary. But along that same vein, on index 102.600, not only did we show the typical standard highway signs from the MUTCD, we also kind of redundantly duplicated some of the signs that are Florida specific out of index 700.102. And as Rick covered a little while ago, we've made some font changes to some of these signs, as well as adding signs and subtracting signs at times. And so to avoid the potential for having something out of sync from 600 to 700.102, we decided that we're just going to eliminate those signs out of index 102.600 and just show them in index 700.102. On sheet 7, you'll see a little bit of reorganization here, but the main focus is that this side road intersecting the work zone detail, which was last year included specifically on index 102.606, we decided to move it into this general information standard because really you could apply this flagger scheme along multiple different standards. And so we wanted to make that a little bit better understood and put it in a place where it could apply to any temporary traffic control zone, where you might have a side road intersecting the work area where there's a lane closure, and you're going to have to locate a flagger there to control that side road. Index 102.602. So we got a few questions on this, and admittedly, because the note 3 that was providing some incidental work provisions for shoulder work was very similar to our mobile operation provisions for not including signs or shadow vehicles. It got confusing to some folks, especially in the maintenance side or folks that are doing like routine inspection type work. And so where we had originally last year said that for incidental type work, you don't need any channelizing devices basically, but you would still need to put a road work ahead sign up. And the intent was that you would use either 102.602 for static shoulder work, or you would use 102.607 for any sort of mobile work, but it was incidental. Admittedly, that got a little bit confusing, so we decided this year to go back to kind of the original shoulder work duration provision, which was essentially you can omit all signs and channelizing devices if the work operation is 60 minutes or less. There was one new note that we did add for the shoulder work standard here, and that was to allow for locations where there was no paved shoulder. So yeah, this was kind of mainly geared to capture those local agency off-system users for utility work and things like that that do rely on our standards. Allow them to still use the worker symbol sign, the old W21-1 sign, instead of the shoulder closed sign when there is no paved shoulder. So it'd be a little bit more consistent setup with what y'all are used to with the shoulder work prior to the revisions last year. Let's see here, standard plan index 102603, which is the 2-lane, 2-way work within the travelway. This was mainly just a little bit of cleanup to note 8. You know, we kind of revised the detailing on sheet 2 for any time you have either the work area encroaching a railroad area, or if you have to encroach along the center line. And basically, you know, the details on sheet 2 show exactly what B in the original note 8 was describing. And so we decided that to avoid some confusion that we were getting and questions we were getting, was to allow the details on the sheet to stand on their own. So basically the change here was just we're addressing the railroad crossing special provisions that tell you when to use and how to use sheet 2. But in terms of encroachment on the center line, there's a detail there for it. So you don't need us to describe it to you when you have a picture. You know, picture's worth 1,000 words, as they say. Index 102604. So this is the 2-lane, 2-way intersection work. Note 9 was revised because you know, we had originally redeveloped this index last year to account for the fact that there was a little bit of misuse of these intersections, because we were seeing flaggers being used to control multiple entrance points into the work zone or multiple directions, and which is technically a violation of the MUTCD flagging procedures. You know, a flagger should always only be controlling the traffic for which he faces, which means he can't face more than one direction. So so we had put in a restricted left or right turn movement sign for the intersection work details. But what we did here was just, now that we've moved that detail for side roads intersecting the work zone to index 102600 that I showed you just a minute ago, where you add an additional flagger, we've made that an option here. So either you've got to do the restricted left or right turning movement sign, or you can use an additional flagger. Also on the intersection work index 102604, we noticed that the flagger symbol was kind of erroneously shown along the center line. However, that should have been shown on the shoulder. So that update was made. One last update here too was similar to that, is that the flagger symbol was shown on the offside of the lane of traffic for which the flagger should be controlling. So in this detail, we also updated to make sure the flagger was shown on the correct shoulder. Let's see here. So mobile operations, index 102607. This one was pretty simple. You know, the standard specifications require that all equipment and work vehicles, or all vehicles in the work area, to have high intensity rotating, flashing strobe lights on the equipment and vehicles. And so we're trying, you know, with the theme last year of trying to remove redundancy, you know, this was just stricken because we want it said one place and one place only, and that is in standard specification 102. Index 102613, you'll see the note box here in the top right corner of the slide. Essentially, this change was just to make sure that the provisions for when a motorist awareness system is to be used, you know, the 5-day period, multi-lane divided facility, posted speed greater than 55 miles per hour. We wanted to return that to the standard so that it was clear, not just on design projects, but even on department permit projects and things like that, what the requirements for the use of the MOS system were. And so that we've taken that and located it back on the index. Index 102615, multi-lane roadway intersection work. This was a pretty minor change, but essentially the original layout for this kind of had the shadow vehicle with attenuator within the buffer space. However, to be consistent with the MUTCD, the buffer space needed to follow upstream of the shadow vehicle. So we just updated that detail to show that correctly. And we realized that the the mode or the fact that there should be an arrow board on the shadow vehicle wasn't shown, so we added that along with the mode. Likewise, on index 102.628, the shadow vehicle was within the buffer space, so we revised the detail to properly show the buffer space upstream of the shadow vehicle. Also on index 102.628, we noticed that the new scenario that we added last year for a 3-lane section where you would use the 2-way left turn lane as a temporary lane for a lane closure, showed a merge arrow when you're approaching that lane closure, but it's also a shift, not a merge, and because of that, using a merge arrow is not accurate with the requirements in 102.600. So we changed the merge arrow and the sign to more accurately show a shift and a caution mode on that arrow board and not a merge arrow. Index 102.660, this is the sidewalk closure standard. This was really minor here. It was mainly just some name changes. We wanted to make sure that the titles for some of these options were more consistent with the use and pay items. So for example, the top detail, would require temporary pavement. So consistent with the pay items, we call that a pedestrian special detour. So we changed the titles to better match what we also call these things in the specifications and pay items. On sheet 2, we also added a new option 2, because we realized that while the preference will always be to, anytime you're taking a pedestrian and taking them out of their separate facility, i.e. sidewalk or shared use path, whatever it is, and placing them within the traveled way, that we want some sort of positive protection and separation with a temporary barrier. That's not always possible because you end up with these chopped up intersections in rural environment or urban environment, that don't allow for the full length of need of a barrier system to even be installed. And so in those cases, we realized that, we need an additional option for those low speed work zone areas where you have those constraints where you can't provide a temporary barrier. So basically option 2 is a restricted option for lower speed environments, essentially where you can't get barrier installed. And so the standard plans instructions kind of give designers the additional information on the restrictions for the use of option 2. And that's why we added a new note 5, kind of giving the engineer and the designer the head up that option 2 should only be used when called for in the plans or as approved by the engineer. So it's not just an option that the contractor can default to anytime they want. So I mentioned the bicycle facility closure index earlier. This was actually titled bicycle lane closure last year when we first introduced this new standard. We decided to change the name to bicycle facility closure because all the same concepts could also apply to, like I mentioned, a paved shoulder that actually constitutes as a bicycle facility per department requirements. And so similar to the sidewalk closure on sheet 2, the existing option that had for some sort of temporary diversion that used temporary pavement, we changed the title to bicycle special detour because that is the pay item and usage that you would use within the specifications. We also added an additional scenario to the bicycle facility closure. So, there's options in the FDM under certain conditions to actually, merge a cyclist into the lane. So, for example, for a shoulder work where you're actually closing the bicycle lane or a rideable shoulder. And so we added a bicycle facility shift shown on the bottom side of this detail for lower speed work zones. So it's the 35-mile or less work zones where a share row would be allowed for a permanent condition. There's a new signing package here that we're providing that will allow for that type of scenario to take place. And that wraps up my portion of the standard plans updates for temporary traffic control. We're gonna transition over to Josh Turley's presentation for the structural updates.
Hello, my name is Joshua Turley. I'm the Structures Standard Plans Engineer here at the State Structures Design Office. I'm going to take you through the notable updates to the Structures Standard Plans for the 22-23 Standards Book. First, we're going to take a look at 45199, Pre-Stressed I-Beams Buildup and Deflection Data. For this detail, we changed the camber tolerance to be in line with the specs. It was a 1/2 inch on this standard, but to make it in line with the specs, we made it 1 inch. And here's the final sheet. Next, we'll take a look at 515, 52, and 62, the pedestrian bicycle railing. For this standard, we changed the fencing from the bottom of the fencing from a twisted type to a knuckled selvage. And the reason we did this was to prevent the twisted type from catching on pedestrians' feet and legs. This was done both for the aluminum version and the steel version of this standard. We updated both the graphic and the table. And here's the final sheet. Next, we made a lot of changes to 521-660, the light pole pedestal for the bridge. So essentially, contractors and industry was asking us for an option that allows for slip forming past the pedestal. Previously, you'd have to stop the slip forming machine, form up around near the pedestal, cast the pedestal in the barrier, and then continue on with the slip forming machine for the barrier. So we had to reorganize the standard, move some details around, and update the bar, the bill of reinforcing steel. In this first sheet here, mainly we're just updating the labels for the reinforcing bars to align with the new bill of reinforcing. And here's the final sheet. On the next sheet, again, we're just moving some of the existing details around to make room for what will be a third option. And here's the final sheet showing the third option. Over on the right, you can see a section of that third option, which allows for the slip forming. We have both a section and a plan view. And so in here, you can see the 1.5 inch gap between the pedestal and the barrier. The slab steel extends out into the pedestal. You could slip form right past the pedestal, and then when everything's done, you grout the gap. On the third sheet, again, we're changing reinforcing labels to make them in line with the new bill of reinforcing steel. Make everything consistent. Here's the final sheet. And on the fourth sheet, we have the updated bill of reinforcing steel. On the bottom right here, we just add a reference for the conduit to index 63010 for ease of use. And on the left here, what we've done is we've added an anchor nut to the anchor bolt. And the reason we do this is there's a gap between the pole base and the pedestal. And because of that, the compression doesn't go right to the face of the pedestal, it goes through the anchor bolt. So we provide an anchor nut for the reverse forces of compression through that anchor bolt to facilitate anchor breakout, or to prevent anchor breakout. And here's the final sheet. Next, we have 54820 MSC retaining wall systems, permanent. Here what we did is we removed the 2E alternative option from the 2D wall type. And we did this because it was felt that the 2E option may not accommodate the more aggressive environment that the 2D wall type was designed for or designated for. And here you have the final sheet. 64931 mast arm assemblies. So these changes came about because the fabricators were asking us to put in some of the things that they do that are constantly being picked up in shop drawings and being approved anyway. So we've added some of those things to the standards to facilitate a quicker, faster process without unnecessary repeated approvals. So on the first sheet here, we've added some language to the materials for the aluminum pole caps and nut covers. And there's the final sheet. On sheet 2, we've added some language about the silicone caulk. And here's the final sheet. For sheet 3, we added an option for a bolt at the arm splice. Now that option goes for both the single arm connections and also the double arm connections. And here's the final sheet for the single arm connection and the one for the double arm connection. And finally, we added on sheet 6 some notes for the pole cap to allow for both a dome and a flat top. In addition, we added a note about the terminal compartment. So we added an option to be able to have a constant depth terminal compartment. It was rather tricky for that terminal compartment to fit it on the rounded surface of the pole without doing a lot of complicated cuts into the terminal compartment. So we made a constant depth terminal compartment, and then we would just cut into the pole and weld on at the tops and the bottoms, and the sides would sit flush. So that's an option that's available for the fabricators. Next up is 791 catwalk details. Here we just added some language about the finish of the self-closing gate. Here's the final sheet on that one. So last but not least, we have 740 and 741, the cantilever sign structure and the span sign structure standard. In the top here, you can see that we corrected the lap splice distance of the closed ties. There's higher strength concrete here, so the lap splice distance required there is less. Also, in order to prevent cracks which occur during fabrication around the stiffener plate welds from making it to the field, we introduced a 100% mag particle testing requirement for those welds, and you can see that in note 7. Here's the final sheet for 740 and the final sheet for 41. All right, that wraps it up for all the notable changes. There's a lot of miscellaneous errata and formatting changes that we did, but we won't spend the time here to go over those. Again, my name is Joshua Turley. I'm the Structure Standard Plans Engineer. And if you have any questions about these or any other standards, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. Also, if you have any ideas for improvements to the standards, see any errors, or have an idea for a new standard that we really should have, please reach out. We're always looking for ways to improve and always welcome those conversations. Thank you.
All right, Rick, we're turning it right back over to you, sir. You got us?
Okay, yeah, I got it. All right. Yeah, thanks, Durwood, and thanks, Josh. I just want to mention again, like I said, this is just a brief overview of all the changes we made this year. It's not meant to cover every change we made, to go into see every single change. And the reason we made every change as well, go to our website that I covered earlier. You can go to the Track the Status page, and go and check you can get every comment. A lot of these questions may be answered there that you may have. And there's a lot more detail than what I covered and what Durwood and Josh covered as well. Once again, if you have any questions, submit them in the chat. We will put those together and send those out. We'll send it out probably by the end of the week, maybe next week, because we want to make sure we get all the appropriate answers. I noticed that a lot of the questions have already been answered, but some of them we're going to have to do a little research on to get the answers made. Once again, thanks. We appreciate all of you checking in with us this year, and look forward to being back next year with the new standard plans. Thank you.